Hi, Saints fans. Josh Starr here. I'm joined by our friend Jim Leitner from the Telegraph Herald and our broadcasts. We are going to go over the schedule today. It's out there now. We have an exciting and a little bit of a different schedule this year. So Jim is here, and we're going to discuss the differences and what it means for the Saints. Jim, thanks for being here.
No question.
It's a little different this year, right?
is.
There's not as many back-to-backs against different teams. There's more of a structure to the weekends and a lot more Eastern Conference games. I want to start there. 40 versus 20 in the Eastern Conference. We'll find out about the Fall Classic a little bit later on. But in terms of a playoff race and being able to play against your conference opponents more often, what does that mean?
Well, no question about it. You have better opportunity to move up and down in the standings in your conference race, and I think that makes a big difference. They played so many games against the Western Conference last year. It was kind of a little bit unbalanced, a little bit, I don't know, I want to say unfair, but it was just, for those teams in the eastern part of the conference, they were playing each other a lot more, and they were just going to the West for 2 games, and that was it. So, as far as the Fighting Saints are concerned, I think it's a good deal because you'll be playing within the conference a lot more, and I think that's a little bit more balanced, and you'll have a little bit more truer standings at the end of the year, I think.
Rivalry is always a big part of the schedules. We're used to playing Cedar Rapids a lot, 8 times again on the schedule this year. A new team you're going to play 8 times this year, Green Bay, and playing them 4 times the last couple of years, now doubling that to 8. What can that do for a rivalry and these two teams playing against each other so often?
We saw it so many times with Cedar Rapids. You kind of get sick of seeing them, and there's a little bit of a hatred that's really built up. And, I think that's certainly going to build a great rivalry between the two teams. And, I always kind of wondered why they only played 4 times apiece, because they have a history and they have a rivalry already. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. A little interesting that it's Green Bay that you're playing 8 times instead of maybe teams that are a little bit closer. But I think it'll build a really good rivalry, and I think it's spread out enough throughout the year. So the one thing that I don't like a lot of times, if you have a big rivalry series, you play teams like 5 times out of 8 or something like that within the season, and that that gets a little bit old. But I think it's spread out enough that it'll be balanced.
Yeah, I felt that way last year in December around the holidays. It was all Des Moines and Cedar Rapids. It felt like a lot of that month. But this year, we mentioned Green Bay more often. Also, rivalries. Madison, a playoff series last year. Muskegon, playoff series the last 2 years against them. Playing them a little bit more often this year. Madison 5 times and Muskegon 6 with 2 trips out there. What are your thoughts on those?
Yeah, again, you get to that Eastern Conference, you're playing the teams that you're either chasing or they're chasing you. You're playing them a little bit more. So I think that when you get down to March and April, those games are going to mean a little bit more. And, I know like the Fighting Saints were in a spot where they played like 7 out of 8 against the Western Conference for a little bit of a stretch there. That's kind of hard to make up any ground. So in this situation, you're going to see your teams in your conference a lot, and it's going to be, like I said earlier, I think it's going to be a lot more true standings because it's more balanced, and most teams are playing a similar number of in-conference games.
Yeah, those crowded sections of the schedule, they're still there a little bit, but 3 weekends where it's 3 games in a row for the Saints this year. I think it was 4 the last couple of years, so maybe a little bit of a break there. There's a couple of 3-game weeks where you play 3 and 4 days, or 4 and 6, or 3 and 5, whatever it may be. But for your sense on those kind of crowded weekends, a couple of them, they're 2 home games, 1 short road trip, and then there's one where all 3 are on the road. How do they manage those?
I like that. In the past, you've had some of those 3-game weekends. They were almost unmanageable. And Kirk McDonald used to say that he called them kind of scheduled losses, because you'd play a fresh team. Like a couple of years ago, they played a fresh team on all 3 games that they played. And, that's kind of a tough situation to be in. But I think looking at the schedule, I don't think they have as many of those as they've had in the past. And I think that's good for player health, and I think it's good for their well-being as well. So it's a little bit more manageable. I only saw maybe 2 or 3 weekends where the schedule looked like it was, the travel was going to be really challenging and really tough, or they don't have those nights where they're in Sioux Falls one night and Fargo the next, and driving through the night to go to the next city. So I think that's a big benefit as well. I just as far as travel, I don't think it's nearly as bad.
Yeah, Kirk McDonald also liked to say that you play 3-3s when you get to pro hockey. So it's a developmental league trying to get guys ready for that, and that is part of the schedule. And you mentioned those types of travel nights where you're leaving a game, getting in at 3-4 in the morning, playing the next night. That has been alleviated a little bit with this new schedule. The Western Conference teams, Waterloo and Des Moines, are going to play 2 times home and away. And then each of the other 6 Western teams are just either home or away. It's not both, and they're both back-to-back nights. So, for that change, you're not going to see everyone come to Dubuque, but it should be a little bit more helpful on the travel for the players.
That is a little bit of a give and take. I want to see every team. I want to see every team here, and I want to, I'd like to have all the Dubuque teams go and see every other building too. So there's 3 buildings where the Fighting Saints won't go next year. But again, I think from the travel standpoint, I think it's going to be a big difference. And like I said, in the past, the Fighting Saints would go to Lincoln one night, and then they'd be in Tri-City the next, or Omaha, or they'd knock out 3 of those games in one weekend, and they're traveling through the night. So that's a big benefit that they're getting that travel taken care of, and it's not nearly as burdensome. But it is a little bit of give and take, and I do think it's kind of got like a college feel to it, because when you get to college hockey, and USHL players are training for the college level, now you're seeing the same team on Saturday and Friday. So I think that's going to be an interesting look too.
Yeah, and one of the things I noticed on the schedule, just in terms of preparation for the teams, getting ready for games, there's no weekend where they play 3 different teams.
Yeah.
So or span of 4 days or so. So they only are going to have to get ready for 2 teams at a time, and that's a lot more similar to the college level. So your point there, I think that's a good one.
It is, and I think it's I kind of like that. All week long, you just prepare for one team. I think that makes a difference. In the past, you'd talk to Coach Dixon or Coach McDonald and say, well, geez, what about Saturday's opponent? And they said, well, we'll figure it out on Saturday morning. We'll figure out the pre-scout on Saturday morning. We're focused on Friday night. And then, like you said, if you have 3 teams in a weekend, that makes it even more challenging, and you're kind of running on fumes as it is. So, I like the fact that you're just going to have to prepare for that one team, just like you'll have in college. And then the other aspect of that is, if you win on Friday night or lose on Friday night, there's little adjustments within the game that you have to make on Saturday night. And this will be a good test for the coaches and the players to adjust either to a loss or a win, and making sure you have a good effort the Saturday night game too. So I think, and that's what you're going to have to face when you're in college too. So I think that'll be a big benefit for the team.
Yeah, and those Western Conference matchups, you get that advantage rather than playing 2 different teams that you're not very familiar with at all from the start anyway in those couple games. But any key dates that stick out to you on the schedule?
Playing the Thanksgiving Eve. The Fighting Saints used to that for a long time, and kind of got away from that. It'll be kind of fun to have that. In the early days, that was always one of the biggest crowds of the season, because you have everyone back home and looking for something to do on Wednesday night before Thanksgiving. The rough part of that is the next morning you got to hop on a bus and go to Muskegon for a weekend series. But, that'll be kind of fun. New Year's Eve, they're playing at home. Against Cedar Rapids, so that ought to be fun. And the big thing I like, though, is you don't have those 3-3s, or as many of those 3-3s, and you don't have any, like those scheduled losses that you had in the past. I think it's a much more fair, more balanced schedule, and I think that'll benefit the players, and I think it'll benefit the fans as well.
For me, opening night, always exciting against last year, traditional rival Tri-City, this year, traditional rival Omaha, right?
Yeah.
It's not necessarily those
Exactly.
big matchups you're accustomed to, rivalry night, but it's still fun to get the season started and to be able to try and kick off the home schedule.
It is, that's going to be, it'll be a little weird because you got Omaha Friday, Saturday. That's going to be a little bit different. And, usually you just have that one game on that weekend and then you move on. But, it'll be fun. And, I'm sure we'll have a lot of fans that go up to Madison the week before.
Bring their cowbells.
To bring their cowbells. I'm not sure if they have been banned for regular season games or not in Madison.
I'm sure the fans will still bring them.
Well, smuggle. You'll have to smuggle them in. But yeah, it's exciting, and this time of year, it's always fun to see the schedule and kind of pick out the dates that you like, and see how how it's going to play out. So it's fun time of year.
Let's wrap up. This team has been in the playoffs every year basically, and to get there, the schedule it ends up being a big part of that, right? That who you can play at what time you play them. Coming down the stretch here, all the Eastern Conference games, a lot of the, there's Fargo late in the season, but a lot of the stretch run is in the conference. Where do you feel like the Saints are going to stack up and be able to try and make that push for either a playoff spot or one of the top seeds at the later part of the season?
We're so used to winning, and they've done a great job of putting together a team, and we're fresh off a training camp just a couple weeks ago, so. There's always that sense of optimism when you go to training camp and you see the new talent that's coming in and the guys that the Fighting Saints drafted in the last month or so. So, it's exciting. The Fighting Saints always find a way to win, and I think this year's the expectation is going to be the same. Especially a lot of key veterans coming back, a lot of 3-year guys coming back this year, and those guys are used to winning. They're used to putting up 40 wins, and they've kind of figured out the secret sauce to getting to that 40-win level. So I would not be surprised to see the Fighting Saints battling for that first round bye again.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. We have a long way to go, right, before the end of the season.
Do.
But that last weekend against Muskegon, 2 straight seasons with playoff series, playing them an extra 2 times this year. That's the only time they're coming to Dubuque, and it's the end of the regular season, the first weekend in April. So I'm really excited to see how much those games might matter toward those bye weeks.
Hopefully they matter.
Hopefully. Yeah.
I mean, it was this year was so great because you came down to the last weekend and you had 4 teams in the Eastern Conference that had a chance to win it. So you could either finish 4th or you could finish 1st, anywhere in between. And, I don't think you could ask for a better finish to a season than that. And, hopefully we have another exciting season like that. But that was really a historic finish to a season.
And you saw this year, doesn't really matter what seed you are anyway, once the playoffs get going and the hottest teams can find their way to the final. So
exactly.
The bye is great. That is a goal set by this team, but it's not the deciding factor come playoff time.
Makes it a little harder, if you don't get that first round bye, it is a little bit harder, and like I think we saw this year, you have to stay healthy, and it's who's playing the best at the right time, and the Fighting Saints found a way to get that bye, and I think they were playing really good hockey, ran into some injuries, and unfortunately that's part of the game, and it kind of cost them, but. Again, I think the Fighting Saints are always going to be in that hunt for that number 1 seed or the 2nd seed, and I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, it should be fun. We have a schedule for the season, and it'll be here before we know it. So go to DubuqueFightingSaints.com, get all the info you need on tickets. If you want season tickets, they're on sale. You can call up or visit the office. And then single game seats and all of that will have information coming soon throughout the summer for you to get on the board there. So, Jim, appreciate your time today.
Always fun to talk hockey in summer.
Yes. It's always fun to get together.
That's right.
With the microphone, right? All right, Jim, appreciate your time. Saints fans, the hockey season is right around the corner. Thanks so much for tuning in.